How to get this thing again. There we go. Okay. Let me just make the. Is this mine? Yeah. Okay. Let's get started. So I'm kind of glad that there are no sheets, because that means more people came than we expected. That's a good thing that there are a lot of people here. Okay, thank you for your patience with the source sheet. It's like hello, welcome. All right, the Tisha B'Av program. There can be. I don't think you'll need it for me. I'm good. The Tisha B'Av program is dedicated to the memories of Mayor Eliezer ben Chaya Fagel and Kalman, Zichrono Livracha, and Bracha Hena Bat Zelig Yirmiyahu and Lipa Michla, Zichrono Livracha. So thank you to the sponsors for their support of Matan Beit Shemesh. We continue our program with Rabbi Dr. Josh Berman, who is a professor of Tanakh at Bar-Ilan University. He's the author of many books. Is your Eicha book out yet? Came out of it. Okay, including a book on Eicha. We should have had it. Okay, we'll do a book lunch. All right. Anyway, he is the leading force behind this Tisha B'Av program for many years at Matan Beit Shemesh. So thank you.
Thank you. I want to just at the outset thank Melissa for all of her assistance. There's a lot that goes on behind the scene. How to do this? Should we do it on Zoom? Not Zoom? What if we are all in shelters? What do we do then? Baruch Hashem, we're all here. Oh, okay. Okay. May we not need it. Okay. Friends, I'd like us to consider for a moment, what are the things that have taken up the central place in our davening? We said we've been davening the past 10, 11 months. So we daven peace. We daven that our enemies should be defeated. We daven that when we send our children out to fight for us, that we should be zocheh to see them come back. Sometimes those fields are answered, sometimes they're not. The gadol, what we ask Baruch Hu is for his rachamim. And that just seems the default and natural and only thing that we should be doing. So I'd like to share here something the Rambam says that it seems to me it's kind of gotten lost in the shuffle. Wait 1 second. There we are. Okay. Good. So the Rambam says, the beginning of Hilchot Taniyot, speaks about the importance of calling out to a Kadosh Baruch Hu when we have tzara. He says, "V'davar zeh midivrei atshuvahu shebizman shetavot tzara v'yizaku aleha v'yariu yed'u hakol shebiglal ma'aseim hara'im hu ra lehen hakatuv avonotechem yitu v'chulei v'zehu sheyigrom lahasir atzara me'alehem." When they are tzarot, it is because of our avonot. It's on us. And if we want the situation better, it's up to us. The Rambam continues. Avalim lo yizaku, velo yariu, ela yomru davar zeh miminhag ha'olam iralanu. It just happens. These things happen. Or they're just political events that happen. Or there's just Rishayim on the other side. That's why this is happening. Political events. Rishayim. B'tzara zo nikroni. Great, and when there are Rishayim in the world, and when there's political forces at work, bad things can happen. Harezo derech achzariyut. This is cruelty. Explain why in a second. V'goremet lahem lidabek b'maseh hara'im. Because we see the solution in political solution in getting rid of Rishayim. This the Rambam calls achzariyut because it takes us away from the focus that should be right in front of us. That is that what's happening to us is because of us. V'tosif hatzarat tzarot achirot. And when we focus only on political solutions, military solutions, then it's a guarantee that one sorrow will come after another because the root cause has not been addressed. הוא שכתוב בתורה, והלכתם מקרי וקרי, והלכתי גם אני עמכם לחמת קרי. כלומר, כשאביא עליכם צרה כדי שתשובו אם תאמרו שהוא קרי, ואוסיף לכם חמת אותו קרי. And so all of the things that happen to us, according to the Rambam, collectively, not on the individual level, this the Rambam only says about collective situations. It is because of collective sins. And I read this Rambam, and this Rambam, on the one hand, is not shocking. I don't think that this is new to anybody, what I've put up here. It is certainly in concert with what the Tanakh says. I can sum up the Tanakh to you in one sentence. When Am Yisrael suffers, it's because she has sinned. Is there any great Kiddush in saying that? And this is what the Rambam continues here. And yet, friends, think of what has happened or what has not happened in the past 10, 11 months here in this country. We are very, very good at asking Kadosh Baruch Hu for Yeshua and for Rachamim, and that has a place. How much even have we in the religious community, this religious community, other shades of religious communities, how much have we really adhered to what the Rambam is saying in engaging in a cheshbon nefesh? Or even before the cheshbon nefesh, just starting with the fundamental assumption that we suffer because we are not worthy of better, because there is something or some things that we have done wrong. I've shared this general approach with a lot of people, and I get a lot of blowback. A lot of people don't want to hear this. Either they find it offensive. Could the suffering we have endured possibly the cause of something that has happened that we have done? That we are the cause? For better. Can anything possibly have justified the immensity of the suffering on Simchat Torah and everything that has come after it? And others will say, fine, it's one thing to talk about, it's on us, when we have Nevi'im to tell us what we've done wrong. But we don't have Nevi'im to tell us what we've done wrong. Well, neither did the Rambam. He stopped the Rambam from thinking in this way. Or there are other people that are uncomfortable with this approach because they say it only leads to finger pointing. If only they were better in this, and they were better in that, and they did just like me, then everything would be good. And the last thing, of course, that we need in this difficult time is endless recrimination and finger pointing. So a lot of people are uncomfortable with this. Friends, today I want to focus on perhaps not an immediate choice of texts for study on Tisha B'Av, and that is our Selichot. Selichot on Tisha B'Av. Let me explain why. For many, many years, it's always puzzled me. You look at the difference between Sephardi Selichot and Ashkenazi Selichot. Sephardi Selichot talk about penance. They're all about tshuva. And Ashkenazi Selichot are all about pogroms. That's what they are. They're suffering and we're being suffered and we're being killed and slaughtered and hacked apart. Literally, those are the terms that these Selichot use routinely. And, for people living in our day and age, until Simchat Torah, this was really like, what does this have to do? Is this really appropriate? Like, couldn't we be a little Sephardi for a little while and, just talk about tshuva? And so these Selichot have been of interest to me for a long time. And now suddenly they are relevant. I said to you that there is a difference between Sephardi and Ashkenazi Selichot, that the Sephardim speak about tshuva and the Ashkenazi Selichot speak about pogroms. There's one other major difference between Ashkenazi Selichot and Sephardi Selichot. Sephardi Selichot say the same thing every day, and Ashkenazi Selichot say different things every day. Even though we're quite accustomed to having the same siddur every single day, but our Selichot change from day to day. And it seems to me that that's not an accident, and it is directly related to the fact that the Ashkenazi Selichot talk about the suffering of Am Yisrael. Because the fundamental question that many of these Selichot are wrestling with is our question today. We suffer on a mass scale. We are clearly enduring a communal event. What is the relationship between the suffering collectively that we endure and the actions of our community? And just as what I said to you, the Rambam has his view, but I have heard from many very fine Jews, different views, that they are uncomfortable with the Rambam's view. We find the very same thing in our Selichot. The Balei Selichot, the Paitanim that wrote these piyutim, were all grappling with this issue. How do we somehow put together the calamities that are currently befalling us with our actions? What is the relationship between that? There is not one opinion. It is a running debate, I would say, through all of the Selichot. And so what I'd like to do here at the end of this morning, as we approach this afternoon, is to share three, maybe 3.5 Selichot that give a sense of the variety of approaches that we have to this issue, our suffering and our sins. What is the relationship between the two? So let's start with this slicha. The first slicha that I want to show you, most of our slichot, the Ashkenazi slichot, just a little bit about the history of slichot. We don't really know exactly how and where slichot came together. It's a lot of different customs that eventually kind of coalesced. The Gemara doesn't talk about saying slichot as we do it, at least in the precise form that we do it, in the week or 2 weeks prior to Rosh Hashanah and then during a Aseret Yemei Teshuvah. There's various minhagim, and most of the piyutim, even though it says on your slicha book, minhag polim, minhag lita, most of the piyutim that we actually read during the slichot are from earlier periods, from the medieval period, from the Gaonim, and then were chosen by different communities, apparently because those particular piyutim sang to them, spoke to them about whatever their particular circumstance was. So this piyut is from someone who lived in the time of a contemporary of Rashi, of Binyamin Ben Zerach. This happens to be the opening slicha that we have. It's the first piyut that we read on Motzei Shabbat. Okay, and it also, as we're going to see, is very clear about where it comes out on this question of what is the relationship between our actions and the consequences that befall us. And it says as follows: Elokeinu v'Elokei Avotenu, ech niftachpeh lefanecha dar metuchim, be'elu panim nishvoch sichim. We want to come and ask, for a good year. What license do we even have to do that? Ga'alu netivotecha hayesharim ve'hanechochim, davachnu b'toivot ובמעשים זנוחים, הלכנו אחרי מסעות שווא ומדוכים, והקשינו עורף והעזנו מצחים, זעמת בשלנו, ואת משכנות נפתחים, חרב ופס ריח ניחוחים. Okay, so what we see here, just think about this. Would we want to say such a thing about our own time? We say extra Tehillim every morning. Would we think to get up and to say to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, we don't even have a right to open our mouths? That everything that has happened to us in the last 10 months, it's of course all our fault, everything? We are the ones that have ruined everything? Try that on. That's a hard one to put on. This is what the Rambam would say. This is what Nevi'ei Yisrael would tell us we should say. But this is something that we're not always comfortable saying. It seems to me that it's not an accident that our slichot, the totality of them, over the 2-3 weeks that we recite them, open with this one. There is not another piyut that we say over the course of the entire slichot book that radiates this message as forcefully as this passage that I just showed you here. You, of course, have many piyutim that will say, yes, well, anachnu ishanu. Yeah, we are bad. But not line after line, paragraph after paragraph. Okay, let's see. Let's read on. Okay, yeah. This piyut continues. Toradu v'tultulu kohanim meshuchim Yodei erech olot uzvachim, kama yisartanu, ayedei tzirim ushluchim, lo ikshavnu lishmoa lemochichim. Then the paitan turns to a different tune. Me'az ve'ad ata anachnu nidachim, ne'eragim, v'nishchatim, v'nitbachim, soradnu mitei me'at ben kotzim kisuchim, inenu chalot, v'li mitzo revachim. Then it comes to a different idea. It's also one that we don't hear much, and it's kind of curious to me why that might be. He says, Porche amcha, porche like avodat paret, those that enslave your people in deep oppression. Porche amcha, asher label shochachim, they bow down to an avodah zarah. One of the names of the avodah zarah is Bel. Asher label shochachim, sefer be'erev, lama matzlichim. Why are our oppressors? Why are the goyim who are doing this stuff? Why are they having such success? Kamim lemulcha ne'atzot sochachim ritzutzim, you shattered ones of Israel. Bameh atem bodchim. There's almost like a dig at us, you know. You think you guys have the truth. You think Torah is Torah Temet. Look what's happening to you. This is before the Crusades. The contemporary of Rashi. This is before the Crusades. It's very interesting to me, this line of approach, which comes up in many of our slichot. Ribono shel olam, look what they're doing to us, and look in the name of what ideologies and what religions they're doing this. This is what we would call here in the local jargon, gol atzmi, what you're doing. How does this radiate at Kiddush Hashem? It's interesting. What it says is that our suffering is not only perhaps because of our sins, which he has said before, but Ribono shel olam, there is religious polemic that needs to go on. How is your name magnified by this? Especially when those that oppress us come in the name of other gods. This comes throughout all the slichot, and yet this too, I haven't heard anyone speak in this vein in the last 10, 11 months. Even though it is abundantly clear, it is not only, or it's not merely, that those that have invaded our land and made us miserable, whether from the south, or whether from the north, or whether from the east, as we can read only too clearly in the headlines in the last 2 days, it isn't merely that these are Arabs and Persians that hate us. These are fanatic Muslims that hate us. And they are coming out of a religious ideology. And yet, even though this type of idea comes through in so many of our slichot, we don't talk this way today. I haven't heard anybody say, Ribono shel olam, this is a Kiddush Hashem, what's happening? Look, they're doing this against you in the name of other religions. And I kind of wondered to myself, so why are we missing this? Why don't we talk this way? Are we perhaps uncomfortable talking this way? Maybe this Paitan, Rav Binyamin ben Zerach, who was a contemporary of Rashi, I don't know much about him, we don't know much about him, but I can tell you one thing for sure. He lived in a world where every Jew was keeping Shabbos, that's for sure. So maybe we do not feel comfortable saying to a Kadosh Baruch Hu, Ribono shel olam, they're coming in the name of their God and their religion, and we're trying to uphold your religion. Well, some of us are. Maybe in this country, maybe a third of us are, at least in the classic sense. So maybe we don't feel that this type of argument to a Kadosh Baruch Hu has validity in this time. I don't know. But I find it really interesting that this is a way of appealing to a Kadosh Baruch Hu that has totally fallen out of our own discourse. Okay. Shochenad, the second half. Shochenad v'kadosh, tzvei be'elbon anuchim, temuchim alecha uvecha mut achim. V'noraot yimincha nivashea lintzachim, ki harachamecha harabim anu betuchim. And all we're really left with to say to Kadosh Baruch Hu is that we so much desire to be close to Him. I want you to remember that third line. Temuchim alecha, we rely on you. Uvecha mut achim, we look to cleave with you. Hold that in mind as we move forward. So we've seen here one piyut. As I said, I don't think it's an accident that it's the opening piyut of all the slichot that we say in, at least in the Lita version. That's where I got the Metsuda Slichot, which is the basis for this linear thing, is I think based on Minhag Lita. We open with a classic Rambam Nivi'ei Yisrael approach. But as I said, you won't find anything that is as long in the vidui that we had at the beginning of this piyut as what we have here. Okay. The next piyut that I want to share with you is heavy, is really heavy. And I want to give a little bit of context about a very heavy topic. So we're all painfully aware of the sexual atrocities that took place on Simchat Torah. And the way that these are often perceived is that these are sexual crimes. Could they be documented, not documented? Who can we prosecute? Who can we not prosecute? But these crimes were not only, these acts were not only of a sexual nature. These were acts of a political nature. These were not merely savages who were looking to take advantage of defenseless victims. These were savages who were coming in the name of a people in order to rape another people. This is common, that when there is war, there is mass rape in order to bring degradation and humiliation to the other side. We may say that when one person is raped b'Machane Yisrael, all of us have been raped. What happened on Simchat Torah was that Gaza raped Israel. That is what happened. We are all a rape victim, collective. That is the central motif of the next piyut that we're going to read. We are accustomed to Selichot or piyutim, where we come before HaKadosh Baruch Hu as an Eved bifnei Rabo, as a son before his father, sometimes as a spouse. One of them I saw even as brothers. In the next piyut that we're going to look at, Am Yisrael appeals to HaKadosh Baruch Hu as rape victim. What I want to do is I want to read it through first time, just so we see the whole piyut, and then come back and unpack what is going on. What is the imagery? What is this woman experiencing as such a victim? And then what does it say about her relationship? What's the comment that's being made here about her actions, her suffering, and her relationship with the Kadosh Baruch Hu? Okay, so as I said, we're going to read it through first time. Okay. All right. This is attributed to Rav Shlomo ben Yehuda Habavli, also 11th century. We're not quite sure where. But again, what's important, this means that it's before the Crusades, even though the types of things that it's going to describe, we would normally assume, but apparently these types of atrocities took place, perhaps on a smaller scale in other places. Elokeinu ve'elokei avoteinu, ein kemidat basar midatecha. Meaning, man is of limited capacities. You are of unlimited capacities. Whatever you want to do, you can do. Ayei kinatcha, v'atzata midatecha. Bat be'rata, you chose a daughter, leveit chemdatecha, to make a beautiful house. Be'aluha adonim. Now, I'm going to depart a little bit from the translation that you have in front of you. It seems to me that especially in this piyut, the Metsuda version sought to, well, sanitize things. Okay, so we need to see it for what it's really saying. This bat be'rata, this daughter chosen by HaKadosh Baruch Hu, be'aluha adonim, she has been raped by those that have dominated her. Ve'en litzmidatecha, and now she is unable to cleave to you. We're going to come back to this. To'ah, she groans. Lidodi, ani me'oreset. Goel rodi ech nidreset. And here too, I'm going to depart from what it says. Goel rodi, you can tell rodi, there's something possessive. She's saying something about herself, not as it says here in third person. What does goel Rodi mean? So it might mean, second, put this here down. It might mean the abhorrent one has dominated me. Or it might mean she begins a sentence, the dominating abhorrent one, and then she can't finish the sentence because she can't describe what was done to her. And so the paitan comes back and he finishes in the fourth line. She says that the abhorrent dominant one, and he says, ech nidreset, how she was trampled. Din hereg le'atzma makneset. And she decrees for herself a decree of death. Didn't work. Okay. We're going to skip shiur for now. We're going to come back to that later. And not only has she decreed for herself a gzar din of mavet, she is dichuya v'gam kinenes. Ha'em li sefer shaluach. She is like a mother, a woman who has been sent out without a sefer kritud. Her husband has banished her without giving her her get. Haben ki yatom oved shaluach. V'gan na'ul hefker kamaluach. U'ma'ayan chatum mirpas daluach. We're going to come back to all this fountain imagery shortly. The paitan says, Zam kerega. Once upon a time, you would get angry for a little bit here and there. Vatali hipuch. Tzvei kodesh atalish. Chibat rea. She, this daughter that you chose for yourself, who was beautiful, keren hapuch. At the end of Sefer Eov has 3 beautiful daughters. And the Sefer lists their names. One of the beautiful daughters, her name is Keren Hapuch. And now what is she? Chashuva v'azuva kekora'at v'puch. And now that she has been raped, she is like a harlot with painted eyes. Tov hatoar, the beautiful girl, kedoranit miparech. Now she is blackened by labor. Shri'a maka mibli erech. And her wounds don't even heal. And we only need to think of those incredibly painful photos of the Tatzpitaniot to really see what's being spoken about here. Yom nakam nistam darech, Yom geula nechtam cherech. Now, there's more to the piyut, but I want to go back and try to understand what some of this imagery is talking about. Okay. All of us are familiar with the highly illogical, but nonetheless real feeling that a person has when someone upon whom they were dependent passes away. Be a spouse. And the feeling that sometimes comes up is one of resentment. How could he leave me here? Abandonment. Now I'm all alone. I can't do this. You used to do all this. And this feeling of resentment is real. It's totally illogical. The person didn't decide to be nifter. And yet this is something that is often very much felt. Rape victims often experience the same sort of thing. If they are in a stable relationship, let's say a marriage, it often turns out that a rape victim will feel a kind of resentment towards their husband. Even if the husband wasn't around at all when the victimization took place. But this woman's view of her husband is, he is my protector. That is what I see in him. And now that I was left to a space where I could not be protected, I cannot see him anymore as it's not blaming him, but he doesn't have that quality for me anymore. It's illogical, but it is no less real. There is a resentment when a woman's partner was not able to protect her. And then, of course, if perhaps maybe there had been something that if some circumstance had been slightly different, he could have, then the resentment will be even greater. That is the background to the beginning of this piyut. she says, the Paitan says, Ein kmidat basar midatecha. You are like anyone else. You have the power to control everything if you want. Where is your vengeance? Where were you to protect her? Bat berarta, you chose her. She was dominated and trampled and raped. And now she is in emotional lockdown. It is not possible for her to cleave to you because she can't see you as her protector anymore. And maybe even because she has questions whether you perhaps could have done something to protect her. Notice here that in this piyut, we have 3 characters. And in the previous piyut, we had 2 characters. In the previous piyut, there were 2 characters. The Paitan was speaking on behalf of Klal Yisrael. We have sinned. We are suffering. We want your rachamim. And the other character is the Kadosh Baruch Hu. In this piyut, there are 3 characters. There is the Paitan, who speaks to a Kadosh Baruch Hu about Am Yisrael, about this woman. She, because she speaks. We'll see 2 lines from her. And that fits with what we know, that someone who suffers like this can't freely express, can't share, but the pain is left inside. And so she's not able to cleave to you because she's lost trust, because there's resentment, because maybe you could have done something. Go on. She groans. And now we're going to hear the only lines that we hear from her. Lidodi ani me'oreset. I'm engaged to my beloved. Go el rodi, the abhorrent dominator. And then she can't even finish her sentence. Ech nidras. Now, what have we learned here about this figure of Am Yisrael, woman as rape victim? She says, Lidodi ani me'oreset. I am engaged. Interesting. That implies, using classical views of marriage and what happens before marriage, or what doesn't happen before marriage, that she is a virgin. She is a virgin who's been raped. This comes out, now I want to look at the section, wait, let's see, to understand, to unpack what that means in this context. I want to look at these psukim from Shir HaShirim, which the next lines in the piyut build off of. In Shir HaShirim, Perek Daled, the Dode stands before the Re'ayah, and he sings her praises about her beauty. And the order in which his praises unfold are from top to bottom. So in Pasuk Aleph, he says, Hinach yafa rayati, Hinach yafa inayich yonim. You have eyes like doves. Mibad letzamater, near your bun or whatever it is. Sa'arech ke'eder ha'izim shegalshu mehar Gilad. Your hair is like a flock of sheep that have come from Har Gilad. Notice that in this pasuk, as in most psukim in this perek, the author of Shir HaShirim moves back and forth from mashal to nimshal. That is, he will say, Hinach yafa inayich, your eyes, and then he uses a metaphor. They are like doves. And so he gives the part of her body that he is describing explicitly, inayich yonim. Sometimes he says it the other way around, or no, also at the end. Se'arech, your hair, ke'eder ha'izim, like a flock of goats or of sheep. And this he does throughout his description. He moves from the mashal, of something out there in nature, whether it's doves or sheep or flowers or whatever it might be, to the nimshal, the part of her that he is describing. This is until we come to Pasuk Yudbet. He has come down, and now he says, Gan na'ul achoti kala, gal na'ul ma'ayan chatum. She is a locked, a sealed fountain. And here, he no longer describes explicitly what it is that he is referring to, because of reasons of tzniut. And so in these psukim, he speaks only metaphorically about her as fountain, a fountain that is sealed. It's sealed because they're not married and he does not have access to the fountain. And so the fountain is locked. Gan na'ul achuti kala. Gal na'ul. It's like a ma'ayan that has stones over it. You can't access the deep riches of the beautiful flowing water that are within the ma'ayan. And he goes on and on about the wonders. He's fantasizing about the wonders of this fountain. Shlachayich pardes rimonim impri megadim farim im nerdim. The waters that flow from this fountain give all sorts of wonderful fruits. Ner becharkom kanev kinamon im kol atzei levona mor ve'oalot im kol roshei besamim. They give rise, the waters, to all sorts of beautiful fragrances. Ma'ayan ganim be'er mayim chayim v'nozlim min Levanon. That is the Dode, fantasizing about this Ma'ayan Chatum to which he has no access. And then in Pasuk Tet Zayin, the woman speaks, because she has heard what the man is saying. And she says, Uri tzafon uvo'i teman, hafichi dani yizlu besamav. She encourages her fountain to flow. She wants to prepare herself to invite her lover to participate in the fountain with her. My gan, it is her gan. Of course it's her gan, it's her body. Then he says, Yavo, she says, Yavo dodi legano. Let my lover come to his garden. That she perceives the union that they will have as a kind of surrendering through love of that which is most deeply hers. And now she will share it, and in some part it will be his. Now let's come back to our piyut. I want to look at the last 4 lines of what we have on the screen here. He says, the Paitan, she is like a gan na'ul, because she was a virgin. Hefker kemaluach. Hefker kemaluach doesn't mean like abandoned with wild grass. It means, maluach, of course, means salty, because when you take a fountain and you throw salt in it, it ruins it. It becomes polluted. It will now produce no life. It will produce only death. And so now she is like a gan, she was like a gan na'ul, but now she is hefker kemaluach. The gan, the ma'ayan, her fountain is now salted. Uma'ayan chatum, that which was sealed near pas, the luach, trodden and polluted. And so when she says, Go'ad, she groans, Ledodi anima oreset. What is being expressed here? What is the experience of a woman in this position? Well, everything, not everything, but one of her cardinal values, her sense of personal boundary, of moral and personal integrity, bodily boundary, is totally shattered. The efforts that she made, the conscious efforts to restrain herself, to view this type of union with someone as kodesh kadashim, if you will, is now totally shattered. And think of what that does to a woman. I mean, you cannot say to her, it wasn't your fault. Of course it wasn't, but that doesn't address her mitzvah. It doesn't address that her own sense of identity is now totally shattered. What is she supposed to do with herself? She is no longer the person who for years and years she held herself to be, because the trauma of it doesn't allow her to get away from it. And so she can't be who she is because she's not that anymore. And what she is now, a polluted woman, whether that's fair or not, that is her own self-judgment. What does it lead her to? Din hereg le'atzma ma'kneset. I can't find my place in this world now that this has happened to me. And so it's not that HaKadosh Baruch Hu was gozer, a gzar din of mavet. She is gozer, gzar din mavet for herself, Din hereg le'atzma makneset. And I don't know what to do with myself. I can't look myself in the mirror. I don't have an identity anymore that I recognize. Dichwia, rejected, and one wonders, is she really rejected? Or perhaps a woman in this position feels, well, of course, now my betrothed, what's he going to want with me? And so her feeling is that she is like ha'em bli sefer shaluach. She is now sent off to fend for herself. A woman who doesn't get a get. Haben ki yatom oved shaluach. She is also like someone who goes out and has nothing to protect her. Now, I've tried to explain these lines with some of the insights from what I read about the trauma of someone who endures such a thing. What is the nimshal? What is the Paitan saying here about Am Yisrael when he casts Am Yisrael to be a woman in such a position? And I think that what he's saying is this: that when Am Yisrael reads the Sifrei Kodesh, the vision that the Torah has, come and do mitzvot, you will be my beloved, you will be my Am Segulah, you will have Shefa Brachot, all the brachot that are written in Vayikra and in Devarim. There is a vision of how she sees herself. There is a vision as to how Am Yisrael sees itself fulfilling the Kadosh Baruch Hu's Torah and what that's supposed to look like. And then when these things happen, these types of victimizations happen, and I'm convinced it must be that Rav Shlomo ben Yehuda Bavli knew something about these actual situations, if not firsthand, but maybe from people that he knew, from family members, from community members. These things happen. That what he's saying is that just as this virgin who underwent this trauma, there's no way for her to relate her vision of herself to her current reality. That is unbridgeable. And it leaves her in total despair. It leaves her wanting to exit this world. This is what this Paitan is saying here about Am Yisrael. That Am Yisrael reads what it's supposed to be like to have a brit with a Kadosh Baruch Hu. And as far as Am Yisrael knows, she's keeping the Torah. And these things are happening that make what the Torah is talking about. There's no way to assimilate what the Torah says things are going to be like with what's happening. And so she's totally distant. She's distant from herself. What's my identity supposed to be? My identity was Torah. My identity was we will keep Torah and mitzvot, and we will live a life in a Kadosh Baruch Hu's protective shade. And now that clearly that protective shade is abused, where was he? How come he didn't protect me? Since he obviously has the opportunity to do so. Now I don't have any vision of myself. I don't know what to do with myself. What am I? Who am I? What guides me? Total despair. Have you noticed, friends, that this piyut says nothing about Averot? Nothing. It's all on you. It's all on you. You want to talk to me about Averot? I don't know if Shlomo ben Yehuda Bavli knew the phrase, but that's blaming the victim. He's not going there. Let's read on. It says, Zam kerega v'atali hipuch. Zere kodesh atali shipuch. Chivat Reya, who was beautiful, Karen Hapuch, one of Eo's daughter, is now chashuva azuva ki korat bapuch. Korat bapuch is the type of dolling up that a harlot does. She puts on all that extra makeup, to try to draw a suitor. This is now how this woman feels about herself. These perhaps are the societal stigmas that go along with having suffered what she has. And so it's all again this question of I don't understand where am I? What am I? How do I fit into this? Since this is not how I perceive myself, but this is what I am. Tov hatoar kikdoranit mi perech shriya makam mi bli erech yom nakam mistam derech yom geula nechtam cherech. Let's read on a little more. The piyutim continues. In this next part, these next two batim here. Now, I've heard that there are now keynotes that were written for what happened on Simchat Torah. Read this and tell me this isn't totally a description of what happened to these kibbutzim. Mata Keren. Am Yisrael was planted in Eretz Yisrael. Shamen Amidushan, given a rich, fertile land. Mirmas Madua, Kicharulei Kibshan, all those beautiful fields and trees gone up in smoke. Notzer Lamala Lo Yishan, Nit'ol Mishloach, Parot Habashan. The piyutim doesn't just can't deal with this. Sorekama betza v'niktefet. What profit is there from cutting this down? Sorachat ma'yitron. How does a Kadosh Baruch Hu gain from this? V'niktefet. Al yad chakuka v'totefet. Am Yisrael is written on a Kadosh Baruch Hu's tefillin, as it were. Aren't we supposed to be close to him? Al ma ahavatan nishtefet. What's happened to his love for her? And he leaves it as an open question. Finish off this keynote. Peulat harovim miut melechet. They do it easily. All this victimization of us. Kriyat sachara ba'da holechet. We seem to get lots of scar for doing this. So far he panut. Am Yisrael looks to you for attention. That's different than cleaving. We're waiting. We're passive. We cannot make the first move. The relationship is totally blown. Vatani shechet, saraf kudav acheret nismechet. Shmonim v'tishim ha'alot ha'ele. The alot that are in the Tochacha and Sefer Dvarim, there are 98 of them. Shamu ele me'ele v'cha'ele, we've gotten more than 99. Terachem tekabtzenu mikanot ele. As yomu v'goyim king dil Adonai asot imel. This is the end of the piyut. Notice, there's nothing here we cleave. We want to cleave to be with you, like we saw in the first piyut. In the first piyut, there's a sense it's on us, and we really wish that we could be close. Here, she doesn't wish to be close. She first needs the Kadosh Baruch Hu to make the turn to her. So what we've seen so far in these two piyutim is mamash mizrach v'mara. Where Am Yisrael suffers. What is the relationship between her suffering and her sins? In the first piyut, the opening one of all our piyutim, it's on us. It's all on us. And the most that we can do is to give an extended vidui and ask for a Kadosh Baruch Hu's racham. And in this second piyut, it's totally the opposite. There's an avowed refusal to go there. We are the victims, and we expect more from a Kadosh Baruch. I want to skip now. A little bit more in mind. I'd like to, okay, we'll get one more in. Get a little more. I want to do a little bit from one more piyut. I couldn't find out who it was from. So it's just Tetvav in the Minhag Lita. So we seem to have two approaches. It's all on us. It's not at all on us. Right, the two piyutim that we've seen. Is there anything that might be in the middle? And this piyut gives a different approach. We're suffering, but the way in which we're going to think about a Kadosh Baruch Hu and our suffering and our sins is going to be not like the first one and not like the second. And to understand what this piyut is going to do, I'd like to just think we can all reflect productively on what happens in our married life. In our married life, we have faults. Our spouses also have faults. I'll speak about my faults. So I know that my faults are really faults. I should really correct them. I really should. And I really can't. I can't. It's just, it is what it is. I do the best I can with the little I have. But a spouse, hopefully, if there's enough of a larger picture that is positive, will acknowledge, yes, those are faults. It really would be best if you could deal with those faults. But there is a larger commitment to the relationship. And so those faults are somehow accepted. There's like, we each have our list for one another. These are the faults, and yeah, you get a pass on those. That's just what we've developed. And this is true, I'm sure, in every household. This is the approach in this piyut. Let's read what it says. Elohim Yisrael Gadol Nodata. You are great. Ata Hashem Avinu Ata Abba. Abba. We all know as parents, if you hold your kids to all their faults and call them out on all their faults all the time, they won't be calling you Abba for much longer. The army so says, Abba, Abba. Ata Hashem Avinu Ata. B'chol parenu elecha korvenu. It's so great to have your hug and your love all the time. Ram v'nisata b'kirvenu, and we love you for it. Gimalachnu hatovot. We get a lot of great things from you. B'chovenu, even though maybe we have faults. Lo b'tzidkotenu u'b'yosher levavenu. Dodenu, you are beloved. Gam ki zanachnu. So even though we're not perfect and we're doing averot, but you should still save us. One more. It's true, it's true. We're not doing what we're supposed to do. Okay, we're not. Now, adaka, tzar nefesh, lecha mechakeh, vayechaz lecha rishonim imanu, me'olam ve'ad olam ne'emanu. But we're waiting because you love us, because we're in a relationship. And so we expect you. Yes, yes, we're sinning. Yes, our sins have brought this upon us. But there's a larger picture. We love each other. And so you're supposed to have that list of things that you forgive us for. And so here we have a third way of, and I think this is actually the way that we live. Right? None of us would say, I don't think many of our tefillot are like that last piyut that I did, of the Israel as rape victim. This is much more like it. Yeah, okay. We'll say a few things, a few of this, and then please save us, save us, save us, save us. And then, the next day we'll start. It's kind of like Avinu Malkeinu. Avinu Malkeinu, I don't know how many things are in there, 35, 40, more than 40 requests. So we Yotzei Zai in the beginning, Avinu Malkeinu Chatanu Lefanecha, and now this is what we want, and this is what we want, and this is what we want. Because we're looking to a Kadosh Baruch Hu as Avinu, as Dodei. Okay. I want to finish with a really powerful piyut by Selichot. Okay, skip. Yes. Okay.
You can only go ahead and audaciously.
Okay, that's also true. Yes, absolutely. Okay, good. Okay. There's a piyut by Selichot. We say it on Erev Rosh Hashanah. Okay? And again, of course, Selichot is long before the Crusades and very far away from the Crusades and what he describes as the Crusades. Okay, so let's start, and then I want to point something out when we get to the end of this slide. He says, wait. This is the right one. Ana habet b'tzidkat avadecha. So I've cited Romans. Ana habet b'tzidkat avadecha v'chasidecha. Asher he'eru nafsham lamut alecha. Am Yisrael are stretching out their necks to be shechted in your name. V'lo chasu al nafsham ve'al zar'am. V'katsu u'ma'asu. V'chayei olam hazeh, this world is of no matter to them. U'bitlu ritzonam mipnei ritzonecha. V'kitshu shimcha gadol. V'lo chileluhu. V'ratzu lezevach, they rushed to be sacrificed like korbanot to defend your name. U'pashtu tzavaram, they stick out their necks. Ve'amdu b'nisayon v'ne'eman. V'nivchenu b'tzeruf, they were proved with cleansing. V'nimtzeu tmimim, and they were found to be a perfect korban. Now, before we read the next part of this piyut, I want us to recall yet another one of the horrific, painful aspects of what happened on Simchat Torah. As we all recall, the zihui halalim, the identification of the victims, took a very long time. In some cases, up to 2 months. And even though perhaps most of the victims could have been identified fairly quickly, what the coroners explained was that we want to make sure that when we send someone to their final resting place, that it's indeed them and only them. And there's painstaking work involved. Even with all the technology that we have, we cannot afford to make a mistake. And we now know that mistakes were indeed nonetheless made. I mean, we heard about the boy from Kiryat Arba, Liebman, Elkanah Liebman, who they thought was Chatuf in Aza. And then they dug up one of the graves and they discovered some of his remains in it. And you think to yourself, Ribono Shel Olam, under what circumstances did these people perish such that it was virtually impossible to identify the remains of one from another? And apparently there were several different such scenarios in which this happened. And I don't know what Rav Sadia Gaon was referring to, but this is what he talks about. He says about these members of Am Yisrael who prepared themselves to be sacrificed. And he says, V'nadu Dmei Avot Ubanim, they merged, Udmei Rachmaniot V'yaldehen, V'nitarvu Dmei Achim V'achayot, Udmei Chatanim V'chalot, Udmei Chachamim V'chachamot, Udmei Hagunim V'hagunot, Udmei Bachurim V'bachurot, Udmei Parnasim V'chazanehem, Udmei Chasidim V'chasidot, Udmei Zkenim U'zekinot, Udmei Dayanim V'sofrehem, Udmei Melamdim V'talmidehem, Udmei Anashim U'neshotehem, V'nehergu Kulam Yachad Al Kiddush Shimcha HaMiyuchad. He continues. Eretz al techasi damam. We have a mitzvah with some animals. You have to do kisui adam. In a life, we kind of want to hide the blood. And Rav Sadia Gaon says, don't hide this blood. Eretz al techasi damam. V'yehi makom lezakatam. Ad yashkif yerei Hashem mishamayim. V'yinkom nikmato. V'nikmat amo. V'nikmat torato. V'nikmat dam avadav. Asher shafchu damam kamayim kehiftach tanu. This is a promise to us in Shirat Ha'azim, that when our blood is spilled like rivers, that Hashem will visit with his vengeance. Yad avi achozeh. It says in Dvarim, Harninu goyim amo. The goyim will praise God when they finally see ki dam avadav yikom. V'nakam yashiv litzarav v'chiper admato. Amo. Et ele mizbechot zechor, all of these korbanot that were sacrificed. Ribono Shel Olam, remember all of these korbanot. Ve'ela akedot ter'eh, and all of these hundreds of examples of Akedat Yitzchak, let these be before you. Ki alachat ish ha'olam. When just there was one instance of Akedat Yitzchak, the world shook. Now, Vehen elam tza'aku chutza, v'nishvatcha levarech oked v'ne'ekad. You gave great bracha, the oked and the ne'ekad. The harbod zar'am kechol hayam, af kiata kama v'chama akdu b'neihem. And now we have so many akedas. Al yichud shimcha hamiyuchad hanichbad. Na doresh tamim kol d'mei banecha tzoakim elecha min ha'adama. והארץ לא יכופר לדם אשר שופך בה, כי אם בדם שופכו, וינחם, ושכך אף, וכלה חימה, ותשבית שוד ושבר מעמך, חוס ורחם את יתר הפליטה, ותוציאנה מאפלה לאורה, וחדש עלינו שנה טובה, שנת רצון, ועת גאולה. שדי תזכור לנו ברית אזרח, ותפקוד לנו זכות הנעקד, ותרחמנו בצדקת משתם, This piyut, which is so filled with anger, I would say, or crying for justice. In the end, he has to get in that one line. Okay, but I still have to be Yotzei Zayin and say somehow that it was on us. Friends, let me end with a few thoughts. I think that these piyutim give us a sense of the range with which, tragically, Am Yisrael have dealt with this question of when the community suffers, what does it mean? How much is on us? And far be it that I should know the answer, which one is the right one. But I do want to say that I think that especially in an age when we have been given the schus of returning to Eretz Yisrael, and especially in an age technologically where we are constantly informing what one another thinks and believes, there is a necessity for a collective cheshbon nefesh. Let me give an example of what I mean. Not even about right now. I want to talk about the Yom Kippur War. Okay? The Yom Kippur War, famously, we didn't think they were going to attack. Okay? Now, who was at failure? Well, some might say, well, it was just those people that were in Agaf Modi'in who should have known better. Tisk, 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 tisk. But the truth of the matter is that the entire Tzibur thought that they weren't going to attack. There were ideas percolating throughout Am Yisrael of Kochi v'otzim yadi. That's not a maisa of an individual, of me versus you versus someone else. This is an idea that is collectively held and collectively fostered. I'll say for myself, I vividly recall maybe a year or two ago, no more than a year, 2-3 years ago, seeing on the news an item about Hamas fighters in a training camp that they had set up, of a mock kibbutz, and filming. This was on the news 2-3 years ago, filming their raiding of a kibbutz and taking it over. I laughed and laughed and laughed and laughed. What do they think? This is just their way of getting out their fantasies. Nothing more than that. No. Where did I get that from? Who else was I giving this off to? This is the type of collective cheshbon nefesh. There are ideas about what's going on in this country in all areas, ideas that we all hold collectively, that we share. We all need to take a step back and say, wait a minute, we have to examine everything. Because when we have the schus of being in Eretz Yisrael, and when we have the reality that we're constantly informing one another in ways that couldn't have happened in pre-modern times, then we have to think about the vibes that we're hearing, the vibes that we're giving off. I'll finish off by saying, in our Amida, we ask HaKadosh Baruch Hu to grant us delivery. We say to him, Re'ev onyenu, the riva rivein. That is perhaps the bracha that we want for our times. Re'ev onyenu, the riva rivein. That, friends, is the fourth bracha that we say of our bakashot. And it seems to me that the bakashot that we say beforehand organically build up to that one. Our first bakashah from HaKadosh Baruch Hu is atachonin adam dat. Things are so complex. They're so complicated. Give us insight as to what's right and what's wrong. It's so complicated. Once we have dat, bina, we say to HaKadosh Baruch Hu, Ashiveinu avinu l'toratecha. Now, give us the prism of Torah to understand what the right values, how to balance all of this competing information. Then we say after that, Slach lanu avinu ki chatanu. What we are experiencing is on some level on us. Only once we have asked for proper insight. Only once we have asked the HaKadosh Baruch Hu to help us get the perspective of the Torah. Only once we have fessed up to our role in this. Only then do we have the schus to say, Re'eva anyenu, the riva riveinu. We hear at song, we should go through this process. Tefillot should be heard. Ashibenu Hashem elecha min hashuva, chadesh yameinu kikeder.
It doesn't have that. All talk on nothing.
No kidding.
It ends.